Hello and welcome to the 909 podcast. Now, I know you, listener. You are the kind of person who buys a lot of gig tickets. The kind of person who hates paying over the odds when the tickets are cheaper elsewhere or when you buy them on sale. Face value. You like getting tickets for face value. We all do, don't we? My guest on this episode is Gary Devitt, who is one of the people behind Toutless, the fan-to-fan music message forum where tickets are traded and sold at face value and have been for 18 years now. With Toutless doing a relaunch on Monday, we talk about all of that, why Toutless is relaunching, the prevalence of scams and bots and all that kind of stuff. I thought it might be a good time to talk to Gary about the live music ticketing landscape and what's going on. As we know, tickets are getting more expensive, and they have been since 2019 or so. There's a report from Polestar that says that. But at the same time, the Live Nation CEO says that ticket prices for live concerts are actually underpriced. So when you compare them to sports, he says, that's Michael Rapino. But of course, that's just one part of the picture. The ticket prices are going up. Why are they going up? Well, no longer do you expect a ticket price to be just one price. There's always a range. There's always tiers. These tiers often come with VIP packages, hospitality tiers, exclusive access, all sorts of different packages to get you to pay more than the baseline ticket price. It's basically a concert cash system. This is the Americanization of ticketing in Ireland and Europe. We're seeing dynamic pricing, surge pricing being applied to things. Essentially, that's what happened with the Oasis gig last year. Obviously, lots of people were left perturbed and annoyed because they expected to pay a certain price and then were in a queue. They got to the end of the queue and they were faced with platinum tickets and all these kind of different things that had no obvious extra benefit than the standard seating or standard ticket. There have been some improvements. Ticketmaster and promoters in the country have shown the ticket prices more readily now available. Ticket ranges, there's always a base price from to, but it's still not clear sometimes how much you will end up paying. Some of that is because the fees are on top. You know, it's bad. And it's getting worse. And if you look at the World Cup as a kind of a stress test, the Gianni Infantino was bragging about how much money the tickets for the World Cup final were going for. And if you take in the resale part of all of this, where the promoter or person putting the ticket on sale for resale can then make a lot of money on the actual resale. If you're talking about thousands of dollars for a ticket or thousands of euro for an experience ticket, then the resale value or the percentage of that is going to be significant. And that is something I want to talk to Gary Devitt from Toutless about, because they operate in opposition to that. They are a fan-to-fan, faced value resale, a fundamentally different worldview than get as much money as you can, which is where it is going at the moment. So I thought it'd be good to talk to Gary about all of that, about Toutless's relaunch, all the things that are happening in the world of music, ticketing, and the live industry. We previously talked about the merch cut. I think we've talked about this, but not for a while. So good to dip back in and see where we're at. Because I don't know about you guys, but every time I look at a ticket price, I'm like, it seems to be going up and up and up and up and up. And are you getting more for it? Probably not. There is monopolies in place. It's only getting worse. We're going to talk about some of the things that are happening with ticketing now. So before we do, just a brief shout out to say, if you are considering supporting and you like what we do here at 909, whether it's the website, the news items, gigs, updates, festival recommendations, new artist recommendations, new music recommendations, all those kind of things that I do, gig guides every week for the last 18 years for Dublin. So do a lot of stuff, but also on the Patreon, you get access to the Discord. Funny, I ended up talking to Gary about this because, our Discord is a place where people are offering tickets to, and their sound. And that's the thing. If you're in a WhatsApp group of people, like-minded people, where you can, ask for tickets, that's a really good thing as well. But Toutless is the public version of that, and I think that's really good. But that is to say, a Patreon access gives you Discord access, which is where our community hang out and talk. It's a private space. So it's safe from the internet in lots of ways. It's also, we do playlists and bonus mixes, and we do half price discounts on every listening party that we have. Our next one is just announced. It's Smashing Pumpkins Siamese Dream on the 26th of August. And then you'll get tickets to reduced price or free tickets to some events for the likes of Club Nights of an Indie Sleaze coming up in September. So there'll be half price tickets for that as well. So yeah, that's just to say, patreon.com/909. I am there. We've been operating that since 2019 or so. So a long, long time. So things are expensive. Concert tickets are expensive. I understand that. So life is expensive. But anything you could do in terms of giving us some support would be appreciated. But that's enough for me. Let's talk to Gary David from Toutless. It's not a simple case of let's just buy a ticket and go to the gig. Now it's a case of, okay, there's so many different things to contend with. There's VIP pricing, platinum tickets, all these other options. You don't know how much you're going to be spending when you get there. So that's, I guess, the context which I want to talk to you about. But for yourself, let's go back to the start. Let's go back to 18 years ago and talk about why did you set up Toutless in the first place?
Well, I actually just dug out there as I was doing a bit of research for this, was one of our first communications, which was back in the State.ie days, when you were actually one of the first people to champion us. And that's something I want. It's always been, you've always been a staunch supporter of us right from the very start. I think it was even, we were at 2,000 users at that stage.
Right.
You know, Toutless was built as a platform for me and a few friends to share tickets. That was it. A friend of mine, Alan, who is now the founding member with myself, a bit of tech knowledge. We built a website. At the time, it was mind blowing, and we just shared it with friends. That was it. It then snowballed. It then was picked up by Phantom FM. It was then picked up by yourself. And then we started seeing more and more users who were had the same ideals as us. That Irish event, the love for events in Ireland is so ingrained in the society, and for community to build over people being able to share event tickets at face value was a huge thing at the time, and it still is. It's still, the face value element, while it's taken a bit of a back burner to the safety element, it's still a huge element of why we do what we do. 18 years down the line, it still is. It's still, the face value, the people wanting to help other people out because they've got a ticket that they can't make it. If you buy a ticket for an event, that's a passion. It's something that you love. It's something you want to go to. And being able to hand that over to another fan, someone who also loves that band that you love, or the football match you wanted to see, or the GA game that you wanted to catch, is a connection. It's what's really built the Toutless community.
And you can see that when you log in, you have a look, and you can see, it's set up as a kind of a message board type system. And and logging in there today, looking at it, I was like, it's also really interesting as well, and something maybe I should do more of, just like seeing how busy things are instead of the demand. You must see you must know what the hottest tickets in town are, because you can see the number of replies. Like right now, I can see that obviously Altogether Now being sold out
now,
happening this weekend. There's a lot of people looking for that.
Altogether Now, like the crowd at Altogether Now were the people who were going to Electric Picnic 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, when they were trading tickets for Electric Picnic, now Altogether Now, obviously it's only a relatively new festival. The members of our website have continued, while they wouldn't really be the kind of people who go to Electric Picnic these days. Now they have Altogether Now, they have Beyond the Pale. There's lots more options for those users, and we can provide somewhere for them to shift their tickets when they
Yeah,
need to.
and alternative and indie and rock stuff is very prominent here right now. Like Angie and the Poitrine, obviously a band that are playing Vicar Street, small gig, big demand for that one. You see Jack White
Huge
there,
demand.
yeah, and then but you got the bigger stuff as well, like Bon Jovi, Croke Park. It's not just Ireland as well, but it's primarily an Irish user base, right?
So about 80% of our users are Ireland, 20% are the UK. And what my assumption is that that's 20% of people who are Irish that live in the UK that are coming home for a gig. But you know it yourself. The average summer comes around, you're going to look at Primavera, you're going to look at Roskilde, you're going to look at Glastonbury. That's what a lot of Irish music fans spend their summer doing. That's how we kind of got a bit of a European wide net when it comes to the listings that we have.
Yeah. So but the thing is, you're here to talk to me because you're also doing a relaunch, and so talk to me about why you needed a relaunch and what are you doing that is different than before the previous 18 years.
Of course. Where do we even start? It's 18 years of building to this, of myself and Alan threatening every year to do something new and build a new platform. We've been at this for a long time. It's been a hobby. It's been a side project. I myself, I don't even live in Ireland anymore. I moved out of Ireland 10 years ago,
right?
And I still keep this up and running because as a labor of love, as it's always been, it still is to this day. I love getting home during the summer and being able to grab a few tickets and go to some shows and be able to help the community and interact with the community. But we, as I mentioned, we started off super small, snowballed. Jim Marr at The Independent picked us up, wrote an article, and things kind of exploded at that stage. That was about 4 or 5 years in. Fast forward to about 8 or 9 years in, and then we started to see quite a lot of scammers hit the website. There was a couple of people, in particular the likes of Electric Picnic and stuff like this, were really high value targets for scammers. So as you mentioned, our website at the moment is a forum. It's designed for people to communicate. It's not designed for people to sell. That's not what's there. It works incredibly well for communication. This is why we've got the Toutless community. It works incredibly well for people to get in touch with other people. What it doesn't work well on is security, is helping people from being scammed, from getting to know who they can trust. All of those elements we've had to put together ad hoc as the years have gone by. So
yeah, it's almost like
hit a point.
My impression of it was that it was people that were on there, you knew that because they were on Toutless, they were trustworthy. You know what I mean? You're like, these people are good-hearted.
I like to think that. I like to think 99% are good-hearted. But then about 2.5 years ago, we got hit by, it had to be like one of these scam centers who were spinning up new phone numbers, new emails immediately as soon as they were reappearing as soon as we could ban them. They had a lot more sophisticated technology to bypass the meager security measures that we had in place. So we made a very drastic decision to close the website to the public. At the time, it was shit or get off the pot. It was, the website was getting inundated with scammers, and we came very close to shutting it down.
Yeah.
And we after 16 years of doing this as a hobby of again, a labor of love, I didn't want to see it go. I know our users didn't want to see it go. I know Alan didn't want to see it go. So we started to put into place what could we do? How can we make Toutless safe? How can we continue to go? Because the scammers have upped their game, and we had to do so in kind.
Yeah,
we're working with the Irish Trust App company. They're an escrow style payment protection company who are based on Stripe. So we're Irish companies all the way down for payment protection, and they're helping us create this incredibly secure system that nobody gets paid until everybody's happy. If you're buying a ticket, your money goes into an escrow hold until you've received the ticket, and then the ticket gets sent, and then you get your money. So everybody's happy, and for me, it's the only way that we can really reopen the website. Otherwise, the scammers win, and we need to give up.
Yeah. And how's it changing for the user then? Is there costs associated with that? How are you working the technology trade
There
off.
is sellers list for free. They always have done. It will always continue that way. Buyers will pay an 8% payment protection fee. That bakes in KYC, so it allows us to work with Stripe's user verification system. So if someone's paying for a ticket or if someone's listing a ticket, that they're a verified user. We have the Trust App anti-fraud system, that if there is a possible fraud case or there's an issue, it gets dealt with by Trust App's fraud department. And 18 years of myself and Alan looking at this and our experience in the ticketing industry on top of the other architecture that we have. We've also partnered with Student Seats. They're one of the largest American football ticket trading websites. They've been operating for the past 5-6 years. And I don't know if you know much about college football in the States, but it's absolutely huge. They'd have 40,000-50,000 seater venues, and they have hundreds of them. So these guys know what they've been doing. The anti-fraud measures and user protection measures that they've built into the new Toutless architecture is outstanding. I'm really, really impressed with what we're able to offer.
Right. Well, I guess, it's been the music ticketing landscape has changed so much in that 18 years and not always for the good and generally not for the good, really. So, like, just for context for the discussion, what we're talking about here, like, the context is a Polestar report says that tickets have gone up 38% since 2019. And it's going up 10.4% on year. Obviously, that's an American report, with the top 100 touring artists grossing 1.36 billion. And a lot of this came out of the pandemic as well. There's a lot of stuff like where tickets became such high demand, and there was kind of a little bit of a reset. The CEO and president of Live Nation, Michael Rapino, says that live tickets are underpriced still when you compare them to sports events. I mean, you also have both as well. So, I mean, how do you see the difference between the two in terms of pricing?
The pricing is something that has always been a major issue with tickets, whether it's for the GA or for a rugby match or more recently the World Cup, where they've just gone and skyrocketed. It's insane. I think I was looking at the seating map for the World Cup final, and the cheapest tickets in the nosebleeds were $10,000. So it's going that way. Adding an extra fee to the ticketing is not something we've ever wanted to do. It's something that we thought long and hard about. However, adding these security protections to our system they're not cheap, and they're not something that we could just offset with Google Ads. I'm sure you know yourself, the revenue off Google Ads has nosedived. So we're in between a rock and a hard place. But what we offer, the protection that we offer, and the security that's going to be for the ticket buyer and seller is well worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think you must have looked around at what other people are offering in terms of like charging. Obviously, people would know that we all know that booking fees, Ticketmaster fees, whatever it is, they can end up being quite large. And then I guess in the context of all that stuff, what we're saying, like, it's been the Americanization, like the World Cup is the end point if it all goes wrong in the way that worked. And like, the only people that could be able to attend these things are people who are rich and who have the money. But that is the Americanization of live music ticketing. And I think in the last few years, I've seen so much of this, like VIP packages, early entry access, special hospitality tiers with merch and all this kind of stuff, platinum ticketing. You're pulling fans into you're saying the baseline is this amount, and then all of a sudden you get in. And we see that with the Oasis gigs were the big flashpoint for that last year. It was billed as dynamic pricing, but what actually I think happened is that there was undisclosed price tiers that were just dropped on the day. Platinum tickets were offered at 2.5 times the regular price of the baseline ticket, and it didn't seem to have any extra benefit. So it's kind of a manufacturer's scarcity as opposed to a surge price or dynamic pricing. And that was what was found by the Competition and Markets Authority, that Ticketmaster didn't use dynamic pricing in this case. They actually just decided to do this. And I think that's where you're getting to this idea where, so a music fan goes to buy a gig or a ticket for a concert, and when they're in the queue, by the end of that queue, if they get there, they don't know how much they're going to be spending. So that's one thing really happening, and that's happening because the demand is there. And sure, demand is one thing, but it's also like there's no fairness in that if you don't know. Obviously, as a result of the Oasis stuff, a lot of Ticketmaster and MCD actually now, since the Oasis thing, now list the price bands on press releases and stuff like that where they didn't before. So a practical thing that my thing has always been, if I'm writing about a gig, I'll just end up putting plus fees on everything because I'm just like, presume there is fees. Presume
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
That like you won't,
Mm-hmm.
you'd be very lucky to buy a ticket for a gig and not be fees. And like I understand as well, like if you use a ticketing platform like Eventbrite, they charge for every ticket, there's VAT and all this kind of stuff. So the baseline price is never just a baseline price anymore unless you're paying in cash. So I think that's the thing. It's kind of a concert cast system that's developing. And if you look at it that way, fundamentally, you know, Toutless is a big contrast to that. Face value, fan to fan resale is a fundamentally different worldview to this kind of tiered access.
So that's what I think, as you've already touched on already, the dynamic in the Irish ticketing industry is shifting, especially with the recent revelation of tickets.ie. There is now no large competitor for Ticketmaster. They are standing on their own. They were always a monopoly, but now even more so. There is no competition for them. We're a very small fish in a very large ocean when it comes against Live Nation and Ticketmaster. And while they do provide an excellent service, they do charge you for it. And you know, it was one of the fears that we always had, is if Toutless goes, you know, what else is there left? You know, you've got Ticketmaster now with with tickets.ie gone. Ticketmaster is the only large ticketing company, obviously Eventbrite, but they've kind of shifted more into the B2B industry as of late. But Ticketmaster themselves can charge what they want. You know, dynamic pricing will become the norm if there's not a place like Toutless to challenge them.
Yeah. So you're kind of putting the power back in people's tickets in a way, and we see this now with.
I'm gonna use that one. Thanks, now.
You know, I mean, yeah, the tickets.ie thing is, you know, it went into liquidation in May or June, wasn't it? June 3rd.
Yeah.
And ceased trading suddenly, and then a few of the festivals that were using it were very much left in the lurch. Other than Ticketmaster, obviously.
I think Rocketon are owed a lot of money.
I don't know what's happened there or what the outcome is, but yeah, scary stuff for anyone that is using a ticket platform. I guess, yeah, you mentioned Eventbrite. I would use that a lot. The other one would be Dice FM. We've seen a lot of people, a lot of companies trying to bring ticketing in to Ireland recently. Skiddle was one I've seen try. Scope as well gets used a fair bit. Ticket Web. Some are trying to build their own, but obviously the problem with that, and as you've discovered, is that like the fraud and scam around this kind of stuff is very hard to stop. So have you encountered that issue with people trying to buy or sell the platinum price tickets? Is that something that
we banned them?
Okay.
We didn't. The platinum price, yes, but the dynamic pricing, particularly with Oasis, it was just, you know, to see the cheek of them, the cheek of I don't know whether the decision was down with Ticketmaster or with the promoter, but you know, Oasis haven't played in so long, and there's so many huge fans of Oasis in Ireland. For them to bleed them dry, and as you mentioned earlier, you've queued for hours, you want that ticket. Here's an option for €500 is just insane. And if there's no one there to challenge Ticketmaster, or if there's no one there to tell them, look, this is crazy, they'll continue to do it. That'll become the norm. Dynamic pricing or band pricing will be regular. And for me, it kind of goes back to you know why we did this 18 years ago, because 20 years ago bands would stop in Ireland once in a blue moon. So if you're trying to get a ticket to a gig, you're going to have to go to one of the touts outside and pay above face value. That's where the I suppose the anger came from originally. And then we see this dynamic pricing, and it's all of those. It's like a repeat cycle. They've pulled the touting into their own business model, and are making a mint out of it.
I think the other thing here was that what had been developed, and maybe it seems to have stopped in Ireland somewhat, is the proliferation of the secondary ticketing sites that had some dodgy practices for sure. There was Seatwave, Viagogo, and StubHub. all of which I've written about before. They don't seem to all be active here in Ireland anymore, and I think that's because there was some bot legislation as well, or bot resale bans, but I don't know if that was thing. They definitely got bad press anyway.
I think the Sale of Tickets Act back in 2021 had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
The idea was for it to enact quite stringent measures to stop the likes of the Viagogo, to stop GetMeIn.com, to stop those.
It banned above face resales, right? That was the idea of it, yeah.
That was the idea. However, it's been in place for 5 years now, and nobody has been prosecuted.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the Sale of Tickets Act was a bad idea. It was a great idea, but I think it needs more teeth. I think they need to be able to slap the likes of those larger sites who've already charged a service charge on their ticket, and now they're charging extra on top. It doesn't matter how you wrap it up; they're still profiting off the face value.
Yeah, it seemed to be operating more as a deterrent for these platforms as opposed to a stopgap. Oh, they kind of said, well, Ireland is not for us, and maybe that's a benefit because we're a smaller country. We know it's still, if you go to these sites now, you can see there's UK tickets there. But I think the UK is apparently copying the Irish laws, and that's something that they're looking at as well.
They haven't put it into legislation yet. It has been announced. I know King Charles was speaking about it just recently. I think it was last month.
Yeah.
However, the legislation, they seem to be dragging their feet with the legislation. There's a lot of the ticketing companies who are quite unhappy with how slow they are with this new legislation. But the UK market is a whole different ballgame. It's incredibly fractured. There isn't a monopoly there. I spoke with the owner of Twickets a couple of years ago when we hit the initial scam issues.
Yeah.
I reached out to him because he was quite similar backgrounds to ourselves, and I just reached out to try and get some advice. And he was just telling me about how fractured the English ticketing industry is, and how it's all, not that it's a free for all, but there's so much competition that everybody's kind of kept on their toes by their competitors.
But that's the one benefit of being in Ireland, is it is smaller and has that. But the opposite is where the tickets prices are generally more expensive than the UK as well. So for somebody looking at it, that's interesting. Yeah. So what about the idea that a lot of these, like Ticketmaster now has a resale? How has that affected your business or your offering here in terms of, obviously the World Cup is a good example, because I'm looking at it, Gianni Infantino was rubbing his hands going, I'm going to make thousands out of this resale, because they're getting the money if they're reselling them. So yeah, obviously there's a resale fee.
It was inevitable. The resale ability or the resale options was always there. Back when you used to get a physical ticket for a show, it did say, this ticket is non-transferable. That can't be enforced. So the likes of Ticketmaster resell, the likes of other platforms reselling their tickets, I'm all for. I really am. You know what I mean? If they're enforcing face value. However, on average, I know the research that I dived through just before our relaunch, on average, Ticketmaster charging upwards of about 20-25% on top of an initial 18-19% service charge. So on a €20 ticket, you know what I mean? You could be paying insane fees. So that has actually created a lot of animosity towards Ticketmaster. And the feedback that we get from our users is that we're David versus Goliath. We're showing them how it should be done, keeping our moral values held high.
Yeah. So back to the act in 2021, the Ticketing Act. That act also only applied to designated events and venues.
Correct.
So that is a real venues, it's a bit like the goods and services bill in the Dáil with the Israeli thing, where it was it needs to be both, but it's only one. It's like it makes things symbolic. The act only applies then if people apply to it. So is it not just a bit of a farce then in that way?
No, I think it's a step in the right direction. We didn't have any legislation in place, and that's, for us, that was a huge milestone. We were able to help the Irish government on writing this act. They reached out to quite a number of platforms to look for feedback on the act. Funny enough, Ticketmaster were the only ones to say that you should not go ahead with this act. Everybody else was on board, but it's a step in the right direction, and at least having that act there and then being able to iterate on that, to me, is something that is moving forward. It really is we're in a much better position than we were 5 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, is there a public register for this kind of stuff? How does it work in terms of how do we know what's being designated and what's not at the moment?
It's not something I've looked into.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure. I know there was that when the act was released, it was something like the venues have to be over 1,000 capacity.
Yeah.
But then they ignore some venues like the golf, the upcoming golf tours.
The Ryder Cup, I think, was mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah. It seemed to be a little bit of a pick and mix as to who gets designated and who doesn't. For me, it's setting a base, and if we can iterate on it and we can improve that sale of ticket act, then we'd be in a much better place. We started out to stop touts selling face value, and that sale of tickets act was a huge. We were just incredibly happy to see that happen at the time. Now I'd love to see a little bit more power behind it. I'd love to see things actually happening based off the act, but let's hope for the future.
You mentioned fraud and scamming. That's something that seems to be quite prevalent. I've even done, I think during the pandemic, I was like, I think this is probably a scam. I was buying a ticket for a gig in London and I was like pining to go somewhere to do something. And I think the only time I've ever been scammed by something, like it was a Rosalia ticket in London. I was like, it's 40 quid. I'm just sitting at home. I knew I was getting myself in for a scam. Do you know what I mean? I was just like, but on the off chance it's not, whatever. But yeah, that was that kind of thing. So will you be opening up to new users then when you relaunch? Is that the idea?
Exactly. With the closing of the site to the public, that's a death knell for any company. We grew by about 1,000 users in 2 years when we closed the registration. When we were averaging something like 300 to 400 new users a week previous to that. So it was a huge step in a backwards direction for us, and the average gig goer these days is less worried about face value tickets and more worried about fraud and scams. I get emails on a daily basis asking for access, asking for advice, sob stories about being ripped off on X or Facebook, or they spent €2,000 on a glamping ticket pass to turn up at Electric Picnic and there's nothing there. These things like this, which really breaks my heart, and it's not something I want to happen to anybody. So security, fraud protection is front and center of the new platform, where we go live on Monday, the 3rd of August, and it will be open to the public.
Very good. And I guess that's the advice, really. If you are feeling desperate for tickets, just don't use Instagram DMs, WhatsApp, unless you're like, there's always friend groups and stuff with people you could probably trust. But Facebook Marketplace, obviously, don't be using that. All those kind of things make it very difficult for people. And you're always going to want to do that. You're always going to want to buy something. So yeah, use Toutless, guys. That's the best way to say it.
If it's too good to be true, you know how it is on the internet. That's what they look for, especially when it comes to events and gigs. They're playing with people's heartstrings. These are events that people really want to go to. They're acts or they're football games that people have a genuine interest in, and the fraudsters are just waiting for that. The scammers know that people will be willing to take a risk. Anytime you're looking at an event to purchase a ticket, just make sure that the person that's providing the ticket can ensure security. Use the likes of Trust App, use Toutless, use an escrow system to ensure that the trade's going to go ahead correctly.
What was the last gig you got to yourself now?
As I mentioned, I left. I live in Vietnam. I live up in Hanoi. I've been here for I've been up here for the past 10 years. So usually I get home during the summer and I'll stack up on gigs. But the last big show I got to was Rammstein. We actually made a bet with my dad. He's a rock head. He's not a metalhead. And he lost a bet with me and my brother. So he had to go to Rammstein. So I flew back and caught an absolutely amazing show. But the music scene here in Vietnam is limited. It's not as thriving as back home.
Fair enough, but you do get home to see some gigs, so that's nice.
That to me that's half the fun.
Yeah. If you had a magic wand, final question, what would you like to see change in the ticketing market? What would you, if you could fix it for everyone, what would you do?
I think everyone needs to take a leaf out of Whelan's book. Whelan's did the recent summer shows where I think it was 12 quid for the events. They did super cheap.
Yeah.
They did a really good lineup, stuff like that. You know what I mean? Bring it back to the music lover. That's what we're here for. We're not here to have champagne seats. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to see their favorite act. If my magic wand could bring the prices back to the 90s and the 80s, that's what I'd do.
It's funny when you see those kind of. I was looking at them recently. I have a couple here, 90s magazines, and you're like, or the old slates, or what was it called? What was it? I was looking at it recently. Mongrel as well, and some of the prices of some of the gigs, and you're like, wow, look at this! It's a $5, it's a $10. It's like very reasonable. Or if you're the kind of person that keeps a big stack of ticket stubs, having a look at the price on them is like, it's very reasonable. It's definitely going in a really dodgy direction at the moment. It's going up and up and up, and I think it's becoming normalized in a way that is going to be very problematic to get back down again. And obviously there's other parts of all this where it's, insurance and cost of everything, like everything has gone up in the last few years, and that is compounding this thing.
But if you look at some of the big acts who are not complaining, but they're talking about the tours, they're talking about what they make on the tours, they're talking about the financial viability of a tour, and they can't make it work. I was reading an article. Basically, they talked about their 2-week tour in America. Was it Los Campesinos? I think it was Los Campesinos.
They're very good at transparency.
Yeah, but they're all a little bit older. They take 2 weeks out of their life a year to tour the States, and they were completely transparent about the breakdown of their tour, of what they make, of how much it costs to run a 2-week tour in the States. And even those guys who are a well-established band, who are charging $20, $30 upwards for the tickets, can't make it work. I don't know where it's going to go. If the bands aren't making money, but the ticket prices are going through the roof on a daily basis, somebody's making money somewhere, and it's not sustainable.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we leave it on a positive note. I hope Toutless the relaunch goes well for you.
Appreciate it.
It is a great site for if you want to actually connect to. That's all we need, I think. I think you mentioned X. You mentioned dodgy places. We should not be looking for tickets. We need these safe places, these safe zones where music fans can actually be there and actually get tickets from people who are actually like them. And I think there's nothing better when we see, say, in our Discord or community or Toutless, when you see somebody just being nice and be like, I have 2 tickets. Would anybody like to take them? You know what I mean? It's like, maybe you can't go last minute, whatever it is. There's all that kind of stuff. I think it's just really positive to make sure that kindness is baked into this kind of stuff. The kind of people that I'm speaking to a lot are people who care about this, care about live music, care about artists, care about gigs, buying vinyl at the merch table, all that kind of stuff. And even that in the last few years, obviously there's merch cuts and all this kind of thing that's been an issue as well. So I think the other thing is that people are much more empowered these days. So hopefully that translates to, a bit more savviness in terms of ticketing, and we'll see what happens in the next few years. But Gary, thanks for talking to me about Toutless, and thanks for talking to me about ticketing.
Appreciate it.
Landscape. Great to connect with you, talk to you about this, and best of luck with the relaunch.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Alan, man. You've been a great help, not just to us, but to the Irish music industry for the 20 years you've been running.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, I just dove through some of my early emails, and you were giving away free tickets back in, as I said, 2008, 2009, and you've been an incredible help right from the start, man.
Thanks. I remember I started Ticket Fairy on Twitter years ago because of that gig. It was the week of there was loads of snow in Dublin, and people couldn't get out to gigs. So I remember starting that. I don't think it's probably active anymore, but it ran for a number of years. It's a kind of similar thing. Using a platform for good. So that's where we leave it. Platform for good. Gary, thanks so much, and best of luck to us. I appreciate
it now.
Thanks for listening to the 909 podcast. If you like what we do, why not consider supporting us at patreon.com/909.